Why is it that racial minorities are so linked with and so likely to vote for the Democratic Party, and they're so unlikely to vote for the Republican Party? The Republican Party often appears to be far less racially and ethnically diverse. What's going on there? Why did that happen? One implication that people might draw is that this is a consequence of the Barack Obama candidacy from 2008, that Barack Obama galvanized the minority community, African Americans, but also Latinos to a large degree, and that as a consequence of this, we have this peculiar racial division in American politics. And that's an understandable kind of inference to draw. It isn't so much about the particular candidacy of Barack Obama, historic though it may be, and galvanizing as it was to many racial and ethnic minorities. But the linkage between the minority communities and the Democratic Party really goes back much further. If one could point to any moment in history as when this kind of racial division began to be infused with American politics, certainly the most recent high-profile moment would be the 1964 presidential contest, featuring incumbent President Lyndon Johnson and Republican candidate Barry Goldwater. Now, the 1964 election was so critical because that was, of course, in the midst of the civil rights movement, and during that campaign, President Lyndon Johnson came out in favor of the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, and Senator Barry Goldwater from Arizona nevertheless opposed the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, not on segregationist grounds, I should certainly add, but on what he regarded as principled conservative grounds. But what's most important is that there was a stark division among the presidential candidates on this very high-profile, racially coded piece of legislation. And that sent a signal to the electorate, to African Americans on the one hand, and to many Southern whites in particular on the other, as to which party most appropriately or accurately or effectively represented their interests. So as a consequence of that campaign and that high-profile issue, African Americans who were already predisposed to support the Democrats, mostly because of the economic policies of the Franklin Roosevelt administration, but there was still a non-trivial fraction of blacks who were voting for Republicans. But after the '64 contest, that pretty much went out the window. Although Lyndon Johnson won the white vote in 1964, he actually lost the white Southern vote, and in subsequent elections, Democrats have been unable to marshal a majority of the white votes. Since that time, the vast majority of blacks, hovering around 85 to 90%, have voted for Democratic presidential candidates and Democratic candidates at other levels of government. And a small but stable majority of whites have voted for Republican candidates. So neither Jimmy Carter in 1976, Bill Clinton in '92 and '96, nor Barack Obama in 2008. These are all successful Democratic candidates at the presidential level following Lyndon Johnson. At no point has any of those candidates received the majority of the white vote. And each of those candidates have received in the neighborhood of 85 to 80% of the black vote or more. And indeed, even the losing Democratic candidates, Carter in '80, Kerry in 2004, in each of those instances, they also have marshaled in the neighborhood of 85 to 90% of the black vote. So yes, it's true that Barack Obama in 2008, as the first black candidate for the presidential contest, was able to galvanize the African American community in ways that had never been seen before. And he achieved, depending on some measures, in the neighborhood of 95 or so % of the black vote, which is astounding that you have one community voting so heavily and uniformly for one candidate. But again, if you compare that number to how Kerry did in 2004, the differences aren't that drastic. And it's in part because of what occurred, the reputations of the parties with respect to issues of race that were solidified in the 1964 presidential contest and in all subsequent contests since then.